Welcome to Campfire Football. I'm Sebastian North. Let's talk about the blue card. It's so funny. IFAB, they say it's the blue card this time. A few weeks ago it was the sin bin. I actually made a video about that. Check that out because it's just my opinion on the whole thing in a more truncated form. But this here, we're going to react to ESPNFC breaking down what they feel, how they feel about this idea of a sin bin blue card. And what's really fascinating about this discussion is that there are multiple points of view. It's not just a panel of a bunch of people saying, game's gone, they're killing the game, who are these people, this is terrible. And a lot of people will just say the same things over and over. So we're going to break that down. First, let's just listen to Dan Thomas, the host here, explain what this will be.
Here's the basis of it. Fouls that prevent a promising attack or dissent will result in a blue card, which will see that player removed from the pitch for 10 minutes. If you receive 2 blue cards, or a combination of a yellow and a blue, you'll be getting a red card.
So that is the basis of it, right? This is what they're trialing at lower levels. Also, pretty much dead on arrival because when they released this news, they've gotten so much backlash that they basically came out and said, no. We're just kind of trying this out in places. We're not really serious about doing this. Please leave us alone. So the backlash was pretty strong, obviously. But also, maybe there are good solutions that come out of this conversation. Not necessarily that this rule change needs to go in, but maybe there are other slight rule changes that would help, that would not then require us to bring in a sin bin 10-minute penalty blue card, right? Or maybe there's situations where it is necessary and we have to parse that out. So first, here's Craig just giving his initial point of view.
We might as well discuss it because it's getting quite a few of us a little angry with these muppets that run the game, because we're in a scenario where it's already difficult enough for the officials. They can't even implement the yellow and red cards properly.
He makes a good point. They can't get the yellow and red cards done correctly. There's so many situations that happen on a weekly basis in every league where a decision for a yellow card is made and you're like, that seems harsh, or a red card decision is made, VAR looks at it, and for whatever reason, again, they get what most people consider the wrong decision. Of course, all of this is subjective. People have multiple opinions on this. Now, he is right. We can't, look at this as some great new thing if you can't get the other rules done correctly first. And the yellow and red card, there is a major problem there. So how do we fix it? Here's him continuing. This is kind of his last point before we move on.
If you show dissent, you get a yellow card. Guess what? That's always been the case. In fact, it's been tightened this season. If you waste time, you get a yellow card. If you're the goalkeeper, you're taking a throw-in, you waste time, you're given a yellow card much quicker this year than you were in previous years.
And that's absolutely true. It's gotten stricter. They are doing exactly that. I mean, that is the law that is currently in place. They talk about dissent for the majority of this conversation. The one thing that I want to bring up before we move on is the preventing a promising attack is one of the things that they have mentioned as possible blue card, sin bin type of thing. I have a real issue with this because I think there are multiple layers and types of this. It's obviously sort of on a subjective spectrum. Now, when you read articles about this or whatever, so frequently, I mean, almost 100% of the time, you're going to see a picture of Giorgio Chiellini grabbing Bukayo Saka's collar in the Euro final a few years ago and pulling him back. And people looked at that and it was so egregious that people were like, that shouldn't just be a yellow. Like, that should be more. That should probably be a red because look how cynical it is. And I think there's a case to be made there. Really cynical fouls, really cynical ones, just full-blown shirt grabs. I remember there's a clip of Marco Verratti just being like grabbing someone, falling over and just being dragged by them for 5 yards, almost pulling their shorts down. That has a different feel than a player who, gets to a ball just a touch late and takes out a player who would have been on a promising attack. And then, the question that you then have there is how much did they mean it? You can tell, right? So if it's insanely cynical, I'm kind of not opposed to the idea of a player getting sent to the sin bin for 10 minutes. I mean, I don't know about 10 minutes, but just being asked to leave the pitch more than a yellow card. So the full-blown shirt grabbing or the kicking a guy when the ball is 10 yards away, like that is one thing. But a lot of the time, players get yellow carded for stopping a promising attack just when they're sort of chasing a guy and they make an attempt for the ball and they are just a touch late, or they just clip their heels and take them down, or even the ones sometimes where you see where they run behind a player and the knee accidentally hits the heel and it brings them down, they get a yellow card. I think there should be some kind of discernment, because if you're making a genuine, honest attempt to play the ball, you're a touch late, and you foul somebody, should you be off for 10 minutes for that? One, you're not out of control and need to calm down, and you weren't being overly cynical. I think there is a difference between Chiellini grabbing Bukayo Saka's collar and someone just making a challenge that they are a quarter of a second late for, right? So I think that is one of the biggest issues. They won't really talk about that at all in this, which is too bad. I think that unfortunately, this conversation is almost entirely surrounded by the dissent and what that means, but that's also okay because they make some interesting points. So let's continue here. This is Frank Leboeuf, French World Cup winner, ex-Chelsea player.
I'm 100% for the blue card, and I'm 100% for that the IFAB copies what we can see in rugby.
So that's his first point. He wants IFAB to copy rugby. This is why I'm wearing a Springboks jersey that I have here, because this conversation seems to always come from what rugby does. They've got a souped-up VAR system that tends to work better than what we have in football, and they use blue cards, which a lot of people think is fantastic, also because rugby players don't really yell at referees that much. But we'll actually talk about that, because there is back chat in rugby to referees, and there is a penalty for it. So we'll get into that in a sec. Here's Frank continuing.
Maybe we can get rid of the yellow card. Just ban the players for 10 minutes in order for him to calm down. And if he carries on, give him a red card.
How about that for an option? Get rid of the yellow card, replace it with the blue. Very interesting. Again, to me, that's like, if the yellow card works for certain things, if you now upgrade how big of a deal a yellow card is, now you've just made the yellow card orange. It doesn't leave much room for challenges or situations that you give a yellow card, which is just a warning. Stay on the pitch, it's a warning, but one more and you're done. So I think that's an interesting thing for him to say. And then I just want to bring this up, because you've got to see the reaction of Jan Arge Fjortoft. He has got a face that he puts on here. Just check this out. This is great.
But they don't have a yellow card per se in rugby, Frank. They have the yellow card, but it has a different...
It's why I say get rid of the yellow card. It's what I said before. Get rid of the yellow card. And just put the guy aside for 10 minutes. Then he comes back.
Excellent. I mean, I love it, because this is kind of where people's minds get a little bit blown by what other people think and their opinions, and it actually creates, at least a more interesting discussion. Is any of this really necessary? There's all these other issues in the game that they're currently getting wrong, and that they're struggling with when it comes to the handball rule, when it comes to just the appropriate use of VAR and some of the decisions that are being made, how much VAR steps in. There's a lot of things that IFAB has to figure out, and here they're bringing in a blue card, which a lot of people look at and go, like, really? Like, this is not the number one priority. So what we're going to do here is listen to Craig talking about the entertainment factor in football, how things have changed, and what would happen if you bring this in.
Entertaining on the field for the neutral, for the fan, for the viewer at home in the last 15 years than it was, say, in the 90s when we were playing. It has got better. When you start sin binning people, what will happen is, generally, as Frank's making the rugby point, is it's backs to the wall stuff.
Basically, teams will park the bus, right? Teams will park the bus if they have, someone off for 10 minutes, and that kills the spectacle, because we all know what happens when there is a red card. It really, really changes the way the game is played, even if it's only for a 10-minute stretch. And by the way, if you do not think that the amount of time wasting and all the little tricks that players would have for shaving seconds off, if you don't think that they'd be doing that during a sin bin moment, it's not just the fact that the pattern of play would be one team bunkers in and the other team's trying to break them down. It's also the fact that the team that has to get through 10 minutes is going to try and make those 10 minutes disappear. Just do anything they can, right? Frank just makes a good point here about the evolution of the game. He talks about the back pass rule. Let's just listen to that real quick.
And again, football evolves, as you just said, Craig. I think the last pass to the goalkeeper 20 or 30 years ago was a great idea.
Absolutely. The back pass rule. I mean, if you look at the Diego Maradona hand of God goal, right? The ball actually gets lobbed up in the air for the goalkeeper to come grab, and he just jumps up and punches it. Hilarious. But that is not possible anymore. And if my entire life playing this game, you've never been able to pass the ball back to the goalkeeper and have them pick it up. Now you think about where the game is with goalkeepers being a part of the play and build-outs and possession. And it just is more exciting that they can't pick it up when it's been passed by their own team. I think that's great. And I also love the fact that it's just with your feet, that you can head the ball back to your goalkeeper and they can pick it up. So a higher level of skill can get you out of a situation. And if you just want to use them as a field player, they are a field player. I think that that's been a fantastic rule change. You know, one small one is just that the ball does not have to go forward off the kickoff. You can just pass it backwards and just have one person there. Like, those are really good. And there have been some overtime. But Frank has another interesting point of view here that really got me thinking.
I think the yellow card is not a good idea. I think the blue card is a better idea because you can maybe think of finishing a game 11 against 11.
I just watched the AFCON final this weekend, and Côte d'Ivoire beating Nigeria 2-1. Côte d'Ivoire they got the winning goal at about the 82nd minute, I think it was. So they had, 7-8 minutes of till the 90, and then there was 7 minutes of stoppage time. I mean, the time wasting that they were doing was, it wasn't horrific. It's normal for what you see, especially in a final and in those situations. But players were taking yellow cards, were wasting time and knowing that they would get a yellow card. But they were essentially waiting for it, right? The goalkeeper, Fofana, he has a free kick at one point. He puts it down, and he just takes a year and a day. Referee gives him a yellow card, and then he milks like the max amount of seconds he can to then kick the ball. How much does the referee add on for this? The reality is Côte d'Ivoire wasted, by just taking time on set pieces and throw-ins, they probably wasted about 2 minutes of that 7. And about 30 seconds was added. So it works. Time wasting works. It's not managed enough for us to be able to stamp it out. If you do some ridiculous time wasting late in a match like that, and it means that you're going to be off the field for the remainder of it and play a man down, you're going to think twice about doing that. And I think that that's interesting because it is annoying to watch a match. And because a team has a lead and they're desperate to hold on to it, the last 10 minutes just become a horrible war of attrition. That is what we don't want to see. So the time wasting issue is a big, big problem. Maybe a blue card can be used for time wasting, because if you just get a yellow and that's not a punitive measure that affects you or you care, well, we've got to do something that makes the players care. So I think that point by Frank was really interesting. It definitely gets me thinking. So Frank then makes his next point about rugby, and that's a big reason why this conversation exists, because rugby does these things. They apparently work, and people who watch it are like, why don't we do this? So here's Frank's point.
Of rugby, they have VAR, they have kind of a VAR, they have that blue card. It works. Why don't we copy them?
So that's his point. Why don't we copy them? All right, so here's where Craig kind of retorts Frank's point on the difference between the way dissent is dealt with in rugby and football.
If you backchat in rugby, it's not a yellow card. If you backchat in rugby, and if it's a free kick, the referee just walks 10 yards forward, and then that team progresses 10 yards.
Interesting. How's that for an option, right? A free kick is given, a player gets in the referee's face, yells at him, get out of my face, we're moving the ball forward 10 yards. Another guy comes over and says something, another 10 yards. You're going to stop very quickly when you've gone from a free kick sort of in midfield to one now in shooting range. Maybe that's a good idea. Let's just continue.
But we have rules, Dan.
Exactly.
At the moment,
But they're not working yet. They're not working at the moment, are they, these rules?
No. So, okay, listen. If we walk through lives and if things not working, we just do another thing who's not working.
So, look, sorry, I meant to tee this up a little bit better, but Jan has an interesting point here. First of all, Dan says the rules aren't working, and Jan says, well, what's this a way to go through life? You have a rule that's not working, so you just bring in another rule that's probably not going to work. This is one of the issues, is people saying the rules aren't working. Rules don't just make things better. It's all about the implementation, right? So if there are laws in the game that are there to help the game and the referees aren't using them or applying them incorrectly, it's not the rules' fault. Like, it's kind of like a lot of people saying VAR is not at fault for what's going on. It's not the technology. It's the people running it. A lot of people think that dissent is such a big deal. Listen to what Dan says.
And here's the problem.
Let's sort
There's a
out-
distinct lack of referees at the moment, wherever you are in the world, because nobody wants the abuse.
Right,
Something
that's
has-
abuse
Yeah,
from
but
the
then
top.
give them a yellow.
That's abuse from
Dan,
the sidelines.
Aha. Dan tries to bring up the point that no one wants to be a referee anymore because of the abuse. From who? Players are not the ones that referees have much of a problem with. It's from the sidelines. The players on the field at youth levels and stuff are not yelling at referees. 13, 14-year-old referees are getting yelled at by parents and coaches. So let's not pretend that giving a player a blue card is going to do anything to make the people on the sidelines behave better. If anything, it's going to make them more upset because of how much you hinder a team and that you're making a kid sit down in timeout. I mean, parents hate that, right? That is just something very important I wanted to touch on. And here we're going to continue with Craig's point on the clampdown of dissent.
Years ago, you could swear and cuss and scream at a referee in his face, "You!" And I've done it, right? But I did it because you get away with it. You can't get away with that now. It gives you a yellow. Now you're in a position, you're on a yellow after 20 minutes, it's a problem. And if people say it's not working, what do you mean it's not working? He's on a yellow. He makes a rash challenge, he's going to go off. Those are the rules. Why would you want to convolute those rules?
That's the thing, right? The point is, we have a rule for it. You backchat to the referee, you get a yellow card. You make an unfortunately timed tackle later in the game, you're done. So, yeah, the rules exist. Why do we need to make big changes if we already have what we need in place? I just think that that's a fantastic point. And so therefore, this is where I think Frank brings up something very good that actually Craig talked about a little earlier with regards to rugby.
They don't apply the rules. You know, you were talking about that free kicks. Like, for example, we had a free kick and somebody was complaining. You put 10 yards ahead the free kick. It was a rule. It was a rule before. It happens. It worked, but it disappeared.
I love the way he said that. It disappeared. It's like, yeah, I have the exact same feeling about it. I remember that was a thing, and it disappeared. This rule, you would think it makes a lot of sense. Where did that go? You had something in place that seemed to work. Why does it not exist anymore? Why don't we just do that? Now, here's Craig talking about the sin bin, the yellow card, kind of what his issue with it is.
Here's where this falls down. In any given period of a match, say four players from a side make 4 rash tackles in the space of 10, 15 minutes. Every one of them can be given a yellow card, correct? How are you going to police these ridiculous blue cards if we have 3, 4, 5 incidents within one half? Are we going to send them all?
I have
Are we
the
going to
answer.
send 4 players to the side?
Good point, right? You don't change the game state massively by giving yellow cards in the first half, but it is a deterrent for players throughout the rest of the match. If you just first half have 3 or 4 incidents like this, what are you going to have? Like a 9-on-8 happening for a period of the first half? That's just a little bit wild, right? Are we really going to send that many guys to the sin bin? So Frank actually followed up by saying that he had the solution to this. It took them a while to get to it because Jan had something to say. So here's what Frank said to that point that Craig just made.
But if you have your teammate
Yeah,
on the sandband,
yeah.
will you do a stupid tackle to join him?
Well,
No, you refrain yourself.
And that's not a bad point. You will refrain yourself. That's kind of Frank's entire argument, though. And players refraining themselves from making bad decisions is not like we already see that they have sometimes trouble doing that. Players make bad decisions. Players engage in violent conduct, and they suffer the repercussions. So you're saying by adding the blue card that will stop? No, we will have situations where you get a 7-on-8 or an 8-on-9. You have to think about these extremes because they do happen in the game. So here's Dan Thomas closing the discussion out.
We've done it. We've had 2 sin bins worth of discussion on this.
Yeah, 20 minutes. So for me, this is the end of the clips that I wanted to show. And I thought what was cool is that we did actually hear a few points of view that are interesting. First of all, we got to talk about the fact that dissent is one of the main driving things here, even though dissent I don't actually think it's gotten worse over time. If you look at the game 20 years ago, the way Craig and Frank in this segment, they both talked about how when they were players, they were brutal with referees because they knew that there was no repercussions. So the repercussions have already sort of improved. The dissent to referees is not as bad as it used to be, at least, especially according to these two ex-pros. That's a good thing. So does the sin bin fix that? I don't know. I think the dissent issue is a really, really strange one. I don't actually think it's the biggest. It's the biggest problem in the game, and that's maybe the crux of this whole thing. Why are IFAB doing this in terms of really looking for, is this a way to improve the game? My biggest issues with the game, as I mentioned earlier, are time wasting and players trying to do what they can to get the other team, in trouble, whether it's yellow cards or red cards or getting penalties, right? Like, you'll see now that VAR is the way it is, where it really checks on things, players will go down and just like stay down and look and act like they're really badly hurt because they know that there's a possibility that the VAR will microscopically look at a situation, and if they got their foot stepped on, maybe the VAR says, hey, there was a foul over there, and let's say there was a goal afterwards. Well, now you're canceling off a goal pretty much just because a guy was like, look how bad I'm hurt. Look in slow-mo, like extra, like zoomed in replay of how he stepped on my foot. That's a foul. The goal shouldn't count. Whereas if the guy just gets up and continues playing, no one asks the question. So players have learned that they can force essentially VAR reviews by the way they behave. I don't really like that. Not long ago, there was a situation where Rodrigo de Paul, it was Joe Ellington on Rodrigo de Paul, World Cup qualifier between Brazil and Argentina. And Joe Ellington sort of just put his arm out, and his elbow hit Rodrigo de Paul in the sort of like the chest, sort of lower neck area. And de Paul grabbed his face, and the referee just sent off Joe Ellington. And then VAR didn't say, hey, whoa, like this whole thing is a farce from de Paul. It was ridiculous, right? And so there's situations like that that are, I think, uglier to all of us who watch the game. And the idea of someone just back-chatting at the ref and them needing to go off the field for 10 minutes and it changes the game, I think that feels too extreme. I'm hoping that this discussion here at least brought up some more nuanced points. And because, look, it's always worth looking into how you can improve the game. The question is, do you want to bring in some sweeping change that tactically alters the entire makeup of it and hurts the spectacle? All right, that's it. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I didn't go too long, but it is an interesting discussion, and not many people are having one that goes into detail and where, you hear differing opinions of pundits, because a lot of the time it's just the same guys all saying, game's gone, I hate it, let's not do it. All right, thanks for stopping by. I'm Sebastian North. Take it easy.